Hi, students. Welcome to Intercultural Communications in Tourism Context. We are reading Chapter 10 this week, and this mini lecture is to accompany the chapter that you're reading for this week. So let's start. In this chapter, we're going to cover intercultural communication and tourism. We're also going to talk about challenges in tourism contexts. And then we're talking about how social media affect tourism. And then we're talking about political and environmental impacts on tourism. And finally, we're going to cover international tourism trend post-pandemic. All right, let's start by talking about being a tourist. So, many of us have been tourists, or if you haven't, then I'm pretty sure you may be someday. And being a tourist may involve traveling within our own state or to another region of the United States, or even embarking on an international trip. So, in any case, tourism contexts provide rich opportunities for intercultural encounters. And these encounters may be positive, but it may also be negative due to power differentials. Now, when we're thinking about this power imbalance or power differentials, let's think about how, for instance, when we travel from an area that are affluent to another area that is less affluent, we may have bigger purchasing power than the people who are living in that area. And so when we're thinking about the encounters, it may affect the power dynamics between us as a tourist versus the hosts or the local people who live in that area. So all of this have implications for intercultural communications. Now, as we think more about travel and tourism, I do want you to think about these questions. What are typical intercultural encounters in tourist contexts? How do cultural differences influence communications in this context? How do societal structures influence tourist encounters? And how do political and economic events impact tourist encounters? And then finally, how can communication be improved in this context? These are like big questions, these umbrella questions that's going to frame the way we approach this idea of intercultural communication within the tourism context. So let's talk about the characteristic of tourist and host encounters. There are several characteristics that differentiate our daily interactions from tourist-host encounters. First of all, as a tourist, we understand that when we visit a specific place, we are only there for a short term, right? And we're there because we would like to get an experience and maybe go shopping and purchase some souvenirs. So, this idea of traveling as a tourist means that they are commercialized. And then, like I mentioned before, they often involve unbalanced power dynamics, especially when we're thinking about the purchasing power, like I said, maybe people who are traveling from the US to a different countries may have stronger purchasing power just due to the strong currency of the US dollars. So think about how all of this affect communication between the hosts and the tourists. So the next part is we're going to talk about the attitudes of hosts towards tourists. As tourists, we may be stepping unaware into a situation where past or current social and political events influence the interactions we'll have with members of host culture. Given the social and political context and the unequal power relations between hosts and tourists, coping with tourists can be a complex process for people in some host countries. And the attitudes of residents may range from retreatism to resistance to to boundary maintenance, all the way to adoptions. So one of the materials that I'm asking you to read and watch is this PBS documentary, as well as an article on Hawaiian concept about taking care of the environment that we step into. And we understand that when there are issues such as over tourism, where a specific place are being visited by so many people, then the host action towards the tourists may not be as welcoming as we expect them to be. So these two additional readings and what is it, mini documentary that I would like you to watch will help you in addressing this, what is it, this issue of the attitudes of residents towards the tourists. So think about different scenarios that cause local communities to practice retreatism, resistance, boundary maintenance, and then the adoptions of embracing the tourists. This is going to be interesting as you're thinking about many destinations here in the US as well as abroad, where the locals may not be as welcoming towards the tourists, or where the locals are very happy when tourism are very active in their area. And then when we're thinking about communication challenges in tourism contexts, there are four common challenges for students of intercultural communication in tourism contexts. The first one is language. If you go to, say, to Mexico, or if you go to Portugal and you understand that they speak language that is not English, how are you going to interact with the local people when you're not able to speak the same language? And then, for instance, you want to go to Japan and you understand that Japan has a completely different social norms and expectations than here in the US. For instance, in within whenever you go to Japan and then you want to take public transportations, you understand that they require you to not talk in the public transportation. They really appreciate being quiet. And then we also understand we're not allowed to drink or eat in the public transportations. So this kind of following social norms and expectations, if you don't do your own research before you visit a specific place, what happen when you don't even understand what the social norms and expectations are? And then talk about dealing with culture shock. When there's such significant differences, then how are you able to navigate those differences? And then also this desire of searching for authenticity and understanding what authenticity actually means in the first place. So this is something that we need to think about as we're thinking about the communication challenges in tourism contexts. So think about different scenarios that cause us as tourists to face these four challenges. And this will be a great exercise as you're trying to understand this chapter better. And then let's talk about the role of social media in tourism. Well, when we're thinking about social media, we can definitely use it to do research, right? Before we embark on our travel. So we also kind of choose our destination depending on what fits our interests. And sometimes what fits our interests or what pique our interest depends on what is on your TikTok page or what is on your Instagram page. So we understand that social media can definitely be used in tourism marketing. And also when you're there in the destination, whenever you're thinking about where to eat, what places to visit, sometimes we rely on social media. So even though social media provides us with plethora of information, we really do need to think critically about how destinations are packaged and marketed. Are people or cultures represented in realistic ways or in more stereotypical images? Are we interested in going to a destination only to reproduce the same images we see on social media? These are questions that we need to ask. And when you have time, there is this 5 minute short interview with Rick Steves, who's the travel expert, about the current travel trends on NPR. So I provided the link there as well. And let's talk now about political and environmental impacts on travel. We have seen how political events can impact the tourism industry dramatically, and terrorist attacks and political instability can have devastating consequences for tourism. Pandemics such as the COVID-19 outbreak can also create, right, such disasters on tourism. For instance, since March 2020 to officially May 2023, the world shut down and international travel declined significantly. We also need to mention the enormous effect of natural disasters on travel and tourism. Think about flood, tsunami, forest fires, and hurricanes, and how they affect tourism in that area. So, according to experts, and you can read this in your textbook, in general, it takes approximately 13 months for a place to recover from a terrorist attack, 20 months from diseases, 24 months from environmental disasters, and 27 months from political unrest. So let's think about what happened to the world and the tourism trend post COVID-19 pandemic. According to the UN World Tourism Organization, it seems like by last year in 2024, more than 1.4 billion people traveled internationally, representing a virtual recovery of 99% of pre-pandemic levels. What does it say? It says that people were so agitated, and they're so ready to leave their home and see the world after a long period of lockdown. So the travel industry generated a revenue of $1.9 trillion in 2024, with each tourist spending more than $1,000 on average. So the number represents an increase of 11% from 2023. Right? And they expect that the tourism in 2025 will continue to grow even more. And as I mentioned previously, economic and geopolitical factors could pose some challenges to these growth expectations. In addition, extreme weather events and staff shortages are also critical challenges identified by the panel of experts in UN World Travel. So, if we take a look at the top 10 most visited countries in 2024, you will see that France was number one, followed by Spain, and the US was number three. These are so fascinating to see how the movement of people across the world trying to travel as much as possible once the world was no longer in shutdown. Now, I have some discussion questions, and I've already posted it, so you may read it, and you need to also read the article on the Hawaiian concept of taking care of the environment that you are traveling to, as well as the short 7 minute documentary on PBS NewsHour about the over-tourism in Europe. All right. I hope this is an interesting topic as well as an interesting chapter for you, and I look forward to reading your discussion posts. Thank you.